What's up everybody, my name's Brandon and we have another package here. Let's get this open. We have the Exway here. Exway Riot. I'm really excited for this board. This board is pretty well known. Without further ado, I present you the Exway. Woo! Oh yes. Look at this. Alright, let's see what else is in the box. If we uncover this compartment, we see a pamphlet from Exway. Nice pamphlet, all the information's right on there. What is this? More pamphlets. Skate tool, an Exway branded orange skate tool. Of course, we have the remote. Ooh, this feels nice. Ooh, this feels like a nice remote. Charger, pretty small looking charger, but I think this is the standard charger. A hex tool of some sort. More hex tools and USB charger for the remote. And extra nuts and bolts, I think. Extra hardware. And then these, looks like they're extra gears and extra belts. Oh, okay, these are for different wheel types. Hefty feeling belt drives too, they feel nice. You have the ABEC core and you have the Orangatang core. Okay, 2 belts and a little bracelet, Born for Freedom. Put that on right now. And of course the board. This is what you guys want to see. Exway, look at that. Damn, this is a nice board. This looks sweet. All right, I'm really excited to try this. I'm gonna test this board out. Give me a couple days, weeks, and I'll come back to my review. And Brandon, in a few days or weeks, take it over from here. Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Brandon again, and things might seem a little different since the last time you saw me, which was probably just a few seconds ago. I got a new computer, a new desk setup, new glasses, but that's besides the point. I've been testing out the Exway X1 Pro Riot for about 3 weeks now since I last unboxed the actual board. And let me tell you, it definitely lives up to the hype that people are talking about because it's a really, really good board. Before I begin, on screen, probably here or so, should be the sort of table of contents, the stuff I'll be talking about in this video, so take a look at that. And also, if you do like this video, please don't forget to actually hit the like button and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And also, if you want, follow me on Instagram where I post other type of electric skateboard content on there. So getting right into this review, the title is no lie. This is the most advanced electric skateboard I've ever had the pleasure of testing. And that begins with its app and software. You can literally customize everything about this board through its software. If you think the acceleration is too slow, no problem. If you think it's too fast, also no problem. If you want seamless reverse like the boosted board remote, also not an issue. You can change all of that in software and it's great. I've literally never seen a board that gives you the option of what Exway calls free mode, which is basically boosted, here's a remote, boosted's reverse mode, where if you pull back, it'll put you in reverse. Pull forward, obviously you go forward. By default, the board comes with the mode where if you pull forward, it goes forward, and pull back, it brakes and locks the wheels. You can keep it like that, but for someone who rides a boosted board, it was really nice to learn that I can switch the mode to, pull back to reverse, because that's what I'm used to as a boosted board rider. So that's a really cool feature. On top of giving you free control of that, as well as adjusting your acceleration and braking curves, the software also allows you to enable cruise control, change your different wheel type settings, as well as updating your board's firmware. That means if Exway were to update the board for whatever reason, maybe improve the battery or the braking, they can just push out a software update. Using the app, you update your board, and your board is completely up to date software-wise. Now, I think this is a really big deal because considering that half your electric skateboard is software, making it run and how smooth that is, this is a really big deal because, you want to keep that up to date. You don't want it to be like falling behind in case there were any issues in the past. So you want to always keep that up to date. So that's really nice that Exway allows you to update your firmware through an app. So when I first received the Exway, it was by default on a mode called safe mode, which means I was locked to around mode 1 and 2 for basically like 10 kilometers of riding. They do this because, as for beginner riders, they want to make sure that beginners get used to the board, ride it a little bit before they allow you to, unlock it to like the higher, faster modes. So that's really great for beginners, but for me, I was like, I mean, I'm already an experienced rider, like, I don't really want to go through this, but I was willing to because I knew, you know, it would be worth it. And, you know, it's good to learn the board before you really, like, go full speed. But it turns out on the app, you can actually disable safe mode. So I just did that, like, since I already know how to ride boards for most part, and, you know, getting on the board for the first time, it felt pretty smooth, so I just put it up on a higher mode. But there's not an invitation for beginners out there to do this. Like, safe mode is enabled by default for a reason, so I definitely recommend that you keep it on if, you know, you're a beginner rider, this is your first board ever. Keep that on because, you know, it will get you used to the board before you go into more dangerous modes. So as for any issues that I've had with the software, I've honestly had none. Like the software works pretty smooth, pretty fast. The only thing is, like, sometimes I find that it takes a little bit longer to connect to the board, but that's literally only a matter of seconds. That's like nitpicky. The app even tells you it takes about 8 seconds to connect, and, you know, that's true to its word. And the other thing is, in order for you to start changing the settings of the board, you have to first connect it on one screen, and then you have to switch to the other screen, and then you can actually edit it. And you can't use your board while editing it, which makes sense. You just have to remember to hit the save and exit button for your actual changes to be made. Now that I've covered the software, let's talk about hardware. The Exway X1 Pro is the only electric skateboard on the market that I know of that has quick swappable drive systems. So the version that Exway sent me was the Riot version, which is their belt drive system. But if you have this Exway X1 Pro system, you can interchangeably switch between hub motors and belt driven motors, which is great because you're given the option to either go with a very torquey setup with the actual belt motors, or you can go for a stealthy, quieter version with the hub motors. Again, since Exway only sent me the Riot pack, I can't say much about the hub motor system, but I've tried it before and it's nice and smooth, but I can't really go into detail with that in this video because I've only tried it for a brief amount of time, but it's also good. With the hub motor system, it basically looks like a normal longboard. Like, if you're riding it, people wouldn't even know that it's an electric skateboard unless they see how fast you accelerate or they see your remote. With the Riot pack, of course, once they see the belt-driven system at the bottom, they'll like know it's an electric skateboard, but it's still pretty stealthy looking considering how the rest of the board looks. So this interchangeable system is great for people who want to actually change between them. You know, there's different reasons to prefer hub versus belt. Day to day, they might want to change that, so that's really cool because you can actually change them within a few minutes. Because literally just, you know, unscrew the trucks, take them out, and plug in the new ones. So that's a really cool feature. So the X1 Pro uses a combination of real seismic trucks as well as these unique looking triangle bushings. So that combination offers a really nice carvy ride, even though the board uses a stiff and wide carbon fiber deck. So even though the deck is stiff, it's actually surprisingly a very comfortable ride. Since it is a belt-driven system, you have the benefit of having full urethane wheels. On the X1 Pro, it comes with 85mm wheels. On top of that, the grip tape's actually the soft foam cushiony grip tape, which, you know, dampens the ride a bit. So all those combined, riding over like cracks and bumps and kind of like bad roads, it's actually not that bad for a stiff board. Like, I didn't have any issues just riding over stuff because it felt like a comfortable ride. A little fun fact, the grip tape that they apply actually covers the truck hardware, but there's actually a really easy way to go around this. If you need to access your truck hardware to install whatever you need, you can actually peel back on the grip tape because the grip tape's kind of thick because of the foam. You can peel back, do whatever you need to do, like install tread lights or something, and then the adhesive's still sticky, so you can just place it right back in and no problem. You don't have to like cut holes through your grip tape or anything. You just peel back, put it back, and you're good to go. So other than that, the Exway is basically built like a tank. The deck is reinforced with, I believe, anti-impact spray, so the deck should be pretty protected against most impacts. It's also IP55 water resistant, which means, you know, if there's a puddle and maybe like damp road, then the Exway shouldn't have a problem like going through it. But as always, I always warn about riding in wet conditions. I never recommend it because, you know, even with normal longboards, it's really dangerous to ride in wet conditions because your wheels can slip out. These are slick urethane wheels after all, so no matter what, like, there's gonna be a dangerous riding in wet roads, even if your board is water resistant. So don't do it if you can avoid it. So if you haven't noticed already, the Exway has no enclosure, which makes it look really beautiful, sleek, and just stealthy looking. They achieve this by putting all the electronic hardware, like the batteries, within the deck. So instead of having an enclosure that comes out like most electric skateboards, Everything's inside the Exway deck, so that allows the Exway to have a really smooth backside, which honestly just looks really nice. So especially if you have the hub motor system, like that board will just look so clean. So that's really cool. So at the middle point between really like hardware and software is your remote. And the remote feels really smooth and really nice. It's just like, it's one of the better remotes that I've had the opportunity to try. This remote does not have a dead man switch like the boosted board, but the wheel is very springy, like it'll go back to center whenever you let go, and it has enough resistance that it feels nice when you're controlling the board. The remote itself has this like nice and rubbery finish where it feels like you have nice grip to the remote. It's not gonna like fall out of your hands. Of course, you have your lanyard too that, you know, I always strap on whenever I ride. The remote also has this bright LED screen that tells you a lot of information about your board, but mostly the speed, the mode you're in, as well as the board and remote's battery life. So basically any crucial information that you might need during a ride. There's only one button on the remote, this single button here, and using this remote you can change the modes. There are 4 different modes, and depending on your app preferences, you can put it in reverse with these buttons, cruise control, as well as turn on and off the board. Another interesting thing I learned about this remote is there's actually an options menu. If the remote's off, you hold down the remote for about 8 seconds, and it brings up this sort of menu. I don't know if you can see, but you're able to repair your remote to your board via Bluetooth, as well as calibrating it and changing the speed unit, which is nice because the remote originally shipped in kilometers per hour, and me being in the US, I use the filthy Imperial system, so I had to change it to miles, so that was nice. But I've never seen a remote with such options, so that's really cool that you can, you know, edit all that. Another cool thing about this remote and the board is that the board is actually always on a standby sort of state. So if you just simply turn on the remote, the board will already be on, so the board will be ready to go, and you can just, you know, head on out without actually having to bend down to turn on the board. I really like this convenient feature, but it does sort of drain your battery. It's like very slightly, but if you're trying to conserve as much battery as you want, you can actually turn this off in the settings. So there is one major issue that I face regarding this remote. One weekend when I was testing out the board, I was away from home. I brought the Exway with me. At some point, I had my remote in my helmet that I usually do when I'm like carrying around my helmet. I was going to put on my helmet, but I forgot that the remote was in there. So around chest level, the remote fell, probably on a weird angle. And when I picked it up, the spring in the remote completely came loose, which made the remote and the board inoperable. Like, it was dangerous to ride. Like, it still kind of works, and I did ride it a little bit, but it was not safe at all because there was no spring, so it was basically just locking into a certain speed if I just like left it there. So that was surprising because I've dropped other remotes before, and I've even had other Exway owners tell me that, you know, they've dropped the remote countless times and that issue has never happened. They've like slammed their remotes and that's never happened. So I think this is a weird, rare occurrence, but I had this fixed. I went to the NYC Exway ambassador, Jeffrey, and shout out to Jeffrey, by the way, for actually setting up this whole thing. He was able to get Exway to send me a board for review, so thank you again, Jeffrey, for this. But anyway, Jeffrey helped me get this fixed. There is a way to sort of access the internal of the remote if you need to, behind like the sticker here. There's a little screw. I wouldn't recommend it. I would, if this ever happened to you, I would contact Exway and, you know, they'll tell you what to do from there on, because they do have a US warehouse, so it might be easy for them to just send you a new remote. So, and I've heard good things about Exway customer support, so I don't imagine that should be an issue. And this is a rare thing too, I believe, so this shouldn't happen to you, but I had to tell you because it did happen to me during my testing and review of this board. So as you can probably tell, the Exway is a beautifully and well-designed board, but how does it ride? I'm here to tell you it rides as well as it's designed. It's super nice. Let me preface with this. If I had the option between riding my boosted board and the Exway X1 Pro Riot, I would have a hard time deciding because they're both really good boards. The Exway is actually comparable to boosted board in terms of reliability and just nice control. And I don't say that lightly. Like, I've tried a lot of boards and every single time I've always believed that boosted is still king when it comes to like sort of reliability and control smoothness. A lot of boards aren't able to achieve that. But the first time I got on the Exway, and I started riding it, I immediately knew that it was like a nice and smooth experience, and I could ride basically the same way that I do with my boosted board which, you know, I do ride pretty hard. So the fact that I can do the things I do on an Exway, especially when I'm on group rides and I'm able to record people the way that I usually do on my boosted board, that is saying something really good in terms of their control and reliability. I think how well the board is basically a testament of a couple of things. The Exway uses a highly modified and improved version of the Hobbywing ESC, so it's super smooth. And in addition to that, they're using a belt drive system. In my experience, I prefer belt drive systems over hub motor systems. All the hub boards that I've tried, they always have a weird sort of delay when it comes to me using the remote and the actual, you know, board working. And I've had like disconnection issues here and there where, you know, I hit bumps and it sort of disconnects, and I think that's due to the hub motor actually controlling the wheel. But when it comes to a belt drive system, the actual motor is separate from the actual wheel, and so because of that, I feel like I have a lot more control when it comes to belt drive system. I feel like I'm doing exactly what I'm telling the board to do. So those two things combined, I think, allows a very nice experience with the Exway. One thing that is different about the Exway compared to the boosted board, which by the way, I'm not trying to call the Exway a boosted board clone. I'm comparing them because boosted board is a really great comparison because it's a great board. The Exway is its own board, especially because of its stiff deck. The Exway actually feels a lot more stable at high speeds. You know, the Exway is actually capable of going like upwards of 29 miles per hour, and you're gonna want a stiff deck when you're going that fast because the boosted flexi deck is gonna wobble and it's not gonna feel as stable, especially for inexperienced riders, you know, if you're going a speed that fast. I've done a review where I've gone about 33 miles per hour on a boosted board, and that's dangerous. Like, that's borderline really dangerous to do on a flexi loaded Vanguard deck that the boosted has. But whereas a stiff deck, that'll likely feel a lot more stable. And I did mention 29 miles per hour. I was able to reach 29 miles per hour on non-turbo mode, which by the way, you can enable. I don't think I mentioned previously in the app, you can enable turbo mode, which unlocks a speed cap. So realistically, you're probably gonna get 28, 29 miles per hour, but I weigh about 120 pounds, so I'm super light. I'm able to hit those high speeds a lot more often. And with turbo mode, I can probably, you know, hit around 30 miles per hour, I can imagine. This board goes fast. It accelerates fast, it goes at fast top speed, and so you need that stiff deck. Now keep in mind those high speeds are basically only attainable if your battery level is closer to 100. Which by the way is probably one of the most disappointing parts about this board, the range. Exway on their website advertises around a 16-mile range for the Exway X1 Pro Riot, but the board goes basically nowhere near that range, unfortunately. You're looking more near like boosted board range. I'd say around, now this is kind of a large range, but maybe 8 to 12 miles. Now it's a large range because, you know, it depends on your, you know, weights and how fast and how hard you're riding. But in my experience, I get around the same range as I do with my boosted board, which is around like, you know, 10-ish miles. If you ride on mode 1 for the whole time, you might be able to hit that 16-mile range mark, but for the most part, I imagine most people are gonna be riding in mode 3 and 4, which will get you the higher speeds. Mode 3 will comfortably get you around 20 to 24 miles per hour, and mode 4 will get you at least 26 miles per hour, assuming your battery's somewhat high. This isn't necessarily like the worst thing because, you know, I'm used to the boosted board, and 10 miles of range is still like more than enough to get me to most places. And even on group rides, like for the New York City group rides at least, we stop every 5 to 7 miles or so you can charge up there. But the other issue is that Exway ships with a standard charger, so it'll take almost 3 hours to charge your board from 0 to full. At a group ride, after a couple of charge spots, you're gonna start feeling like you're not gonna have enough range to get where you need to go. So if you get the Exway, I highly recommend you get the fast charger so you can go a lot farther without having to wait for too long. Speaking of charging, I think it is a little bit weird with the Riot Pack. The charger port is actually right behind the motors of the belt drive system, so it's kind of hard to access. Although with enough practice, I was able to do it pretty quickly with just one hand. So over time, it's not really an issue, but initially it is kind of annoying to get that plug in there, which is magnetic, by the way, which is cool. So that's at least better than having to actually plug in the board. And it's a magnet, so you can just quickly grab the board and go without having to like necessarily bend down and yank it out or anything. Something that the manual does tell you is that you shouldn't plug in the board while the charger is already plugged in the wall. They tell you to plug in the board first before you plug in the charger. That's because like if you do the opposite of that, the plug might spark a bit, which I don't think is that bad. I've plugged it in both ways and haven't had an issue, so regardless, you just want to look out for that. Overall, the Exway X1 Pro Riot is an amazing board. With its combination of good software and hardware, you get a highly customizable board that rivals even boosted boards in terms of reliability and comfort. While it doesn't meet all the expected specifications such as range, it still does a phenomenal job at everything else, and I think it distinguishes itself as a capable and unique board in this very large electric skateboard market. On its website, the Exway X1 Pro Riot normally costs around $1,100, but right now it's on sale for about $900, which in my opinion is a steal considering that this board can be considered as good as the boosted board for a lot less. If you're a beginner, expert, or if you just need something that's fast and stealthy, the Exway is a very, very good choice and worth your consideration. That's basically it for this review. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. Like the video if you liked it, and of course subscribe if you want to see more electric skateboard reviews like this. But that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.